obviously know who you guys are, and I love and adore you because you have been just absolutely incredible individuals, but also have directly contributed to my healing journey. But for women that are maybe attending the summit and have never heard your names before or know what kind of work you've been doing, I'd love to introduce you to them first. So Robyn, if you wouldn't mind starting off, I'd just give us a little bit of history of who Robyn Tout is, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So I'm Robyn Tout, co-founder of the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition, also known as GPAC. And I got here because I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. And it was my third cancer diagnosis. So my first one was at age 23. I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And I've had a few health scares just over the last couple decades. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I chose to have a double mastectomy and was kind of talked into the breast reconstruction with implants. And I wasn't given proper informed consent by my doctors. And I didn't know any of this at the time until I had the surgeries and I got really, really sick from my breast implants, like a lot of women do. And so by the time I figured it out and had them removed, I got better right away. And it really struck me that this is not just happening to me. How many other breast cancer patients is this happening to? And they weren't told by their doctors. And as a breast cancer patient, I had a whole team of doctors overseeing and managing my care. So it was really frustrating to know that every single one of them failed me. So that's really how I became a patient advocate. I started advocating in the breast cancer community, which was really difficult at the time because back then in 2017, the FDA wasn't really admitting any of this yet. So it wasn't until I actually met Terri in 2018 at our first FDA meeting together. We were actually randomly partnered together as roommates. And I don't even know what to say. Like, we've been inseparable ever since. So that's how I got here.
I love that. I was literally going to say, and how did you meet Terri? And so that's a perfect segue. Miss Terri, you are next level as well. I would love same question, right? What really started you in on this whole journey up until the point you met Robyn?
So for me, I opted to get breast implants just because I felt like there was something missing. My kids were more independent and they were doing their own thing, and I didn't feel like I needed to be in mommy zone as much. And so I was working out, taking care of myself. I was like at the best shape of my life, but I didn't have big breasts or perky breasts or whatever you want to say. I wasn't happy with them. And then, so I opted to get breast implants. Same thing. I was never given proper informed consent. What I know now, at the time, I thought like what I was being told by the plastic surgeon was everything I needed to know, but it was silly things like, how I'm going to look, my aesthetics, not really like, what could happen down the road. Or, the only complications I heard of were surgical complications. And then also if I was in a car accident or high impact, then I might have, deflation of my implants. But other than that, nothing. And so I wasn't happy with them to start with, which a lot of women, I don't know if they are or aren't, but I was not. They felt foreign. They were too big. I was one of the women that just got pumped up as big as they thought that I should be instead of what I was requesting. And so it was probably like immediately I had symptoms, and then 4 years later, I was to the point of really like over 30 plus symptoms, going to doctor, and another 6 years of that until I was bedridden. And the moment that I found out that it could be my breast implants causing me this, my issues was from a friend. And when she told me, I just sat there and said, oh my God, it really probably is my implants. And I was at the point of total bedridden, couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, completely eating two foods because I was allergic to everything. I barely left my house. Everything was dark, it was miserable. And I really thought I was dying. And I know that I hear this story all the time now being in this community. And because of that, I just told myself if this is what has happened to me, and I miss all this time with my children, I miss all this time, like going from doctor to doctor, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure it's happening to other women. And it made me so angry and frustrated that I'm like, you know what? I don't know how this looks, but I will never, ever be quiet again. So that's how my journey started. And then I started the breast implant Florida support group. And that is where how I got to the FDA. And then when I got to the FDA, my roommate was Robyn Tout. And I know she said we've been inseparable ever since, but she is like the sister that I should have had. I mean, we share the same brain, we think the same way. We just want to make a difference in the world. And that's why we started GPAC.
Well, and you guys truly are. What's so interesting to me as I'm sitting here processing just the information you've shared already is when you think about it this way, there's so many different reasons women get breast implants, right? And it's really interesting to see the three of us all have totally different stories. Like Robyn, yours was only because you got cancer, right?
Yeah.
Terri, there's a lot of women go through that body change after they have kids and don't like their body anymore and think that's the solution, right? That's really common. I personally was 19 and just had been told my whole life that my 105-pound frame wasn't feminine enough, which, when I think about it that way, like my 19-year-old body not being womanly enough is kind of like a no shit, I was still a child moment, right? But whatever, it's fine. But it's just really interesting to see like our stories are so different and yet very much the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I literally started to tear up as you started talking about you couldn't climb a flight of stairs, Terri, because that was the moment for me when I went, okay, something is seriously wrong. I'm 32 and I'm having to stop at the top of my stairs and I can't get to my baby without I can't breathe. And all these doctors are telling me I'm fine. I'm healthy even. Right. And so how can I not make it up 12 flights or 12, not flights, 12 steps, right? 12 steps up and I can't breathe. And so that was super triggering to hear.
Yeah.
Well, and it's frustrating too, because for me, I think my journey happened so quickly and so much later than you guys who suffered for years. I only had my implants in for 4 months, which is crazy because I meet women like you and like Terri, and Terri had hers for 10 years. Other women have had theirs for 15, 20 years. The woman who saved my life had them for, I think, 12 or 15 years. And it makes me so angry because the stories are the same. I went to this many doctors. I spent this many tens of thousands of dollars. I lost this much time with my kids, this many activities I didn't get to share with my kids because none of the doctors knew. And that frustrates me the most because doctors do know. The plastic surgeons do know. They've known since the early 90s when silicone breast implants were pulled off the market. It doesn't matter what kind of breast implants they are, what brand they are, if they're textured or smooth, saline or silicone, they all cause these problems and they knew it. And they made a choice, a conscious choice, to hide that from patients and to withhold that important information and withhold the information book that I never even got until after I explanted. So that's frustrating to me. But then as Terri and I have been advocating for the last 5-6 years, we've had multiple meetings with the FDA where we share this information and they still fail to inform the entire medical community. So Cheyenne, when you went to your GP and he's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You're fine. You're healthy. Your labs are fine. Your tests are fine. Terri, I know, went to dermatologists, rheumatologists, pulmonologists, every specialist you can think of, these women have gone to. The woman, Michelle, who saved my life, has a binder this thick with all of her labs, tests, scans, MRIs, CAT scans, brain scans, chest x-rays, shoulder x-rays. She was going to get a shoulder replacement surgery because her shoulder hurt so bad.
Mine does. My left shoulder, that was one of my biggest pains, is my left shoulder. I had doctors asking me if I was in an accident because I was in so much pain and there was clear inflammation. And I'm like, no, nothing has happened to me. So why does this happen? That's so interesting.
Yeah. So it's very frustrating that it's been going on this long and they know, and they're still withholding it, still sweeping it under the rug. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's what we're up against.
Right. Well, and that's something that has really, that's one of the biggest reasons I became an advocate is I realized that I went through all of this, right? I had mine for 12 years and they made me think I was dying, right? Like that's a common thing that we feel, and it's a very real thing. And that before I was even born, there was women trying to fight to prove that these are not safe. And I certainly was not informed of any of these things, right? Nobody's sending out pamphlets even now that says these things cause cancer. If you have them, you might be at risk. Like that's not happening. It's just insane. And now that you guys have come together and you've created GPAC, can you explain just what the primary goal of GPAC is? Because you guys are doing a lot.
Well, one of the goals was to get advocates together across the world, because we felt like if it's happened, we hear the same stories from people in Australia, people in England. We've never met each other. We've never seen each other in person, only just through, social media. And when you hear the same stories, you're like, wait, if we connect, if we come together, we have a little bit more power. We have more, ways to make changes. And so that was one of our goals. And then the informed consent part was another one. And then go ahead, Robyn. I know you have.
Yeah, I mean, that was my passion from the get-go, was the frustration that I didn't get proper informed consent. And when Terri and I first started advocating, there has been many groups of advocates before us, and there were some advocates from a different medical device working on a federal law to amend the Medical Device Safety Act from, I believe it was in the mid-70s. I'm not sure the exact date, but they were trying to amend that act so that patients were more informed. And I remember them talking about it. I actually went to DC and sat in senators and congressmen's office lobbying, for support for that bill. And I it wasn't really going anywhere. They had a sponsor that was doing a great job, and they had some co-sponsors. I felt very helpless. I felt like my hands were tied, and I want to do more to help. What can I do to help? And so I actually went to my state capital in Arizona and had legislation passed to ensure that patients in Arizona, if they're getting breast implants, they will get the patient decision checklist that Terri and I created. We worked really hard on it. We actually partnered with ASPS, which is the largest plastic surgeon society in the world. And, they adopted our checklist and put it on their website. And we thought this was a good way to all work together, kind of have a seat at the same table together and come up with solutions so that what happened to Terri and I isn't happening to other women. Not to mention the fact that, like you said, Cheyenne, you got your implants, you weren't told anything. Right now, as we sit here, there's about 15 to maybe 20 million women on the planet that have breast implants. If they weren't given proper consent, because like we weren't, who's telling them now, hey, by the way, you've had your breast implants for 20 years. We're just realizing they can cause multiple types of cancer. No one's reaching out to these patients. The FDA and the plastic surgeon societies have never tracked or followed or monitored these patients or their health. And the core studies that they were supposed to be doing to get FDA approval, the manufacturers never completed those studies. And so they stopped following these women. And now there's just these rogue women out there all over the world that have breast implants, and they have no idea. That's a tragedy. It's very tragic. And we just feel like awareness is the biggest thing that we can do as advocates. And I just love seeing all the different ways. I mean, I think we've all seen on social media, there's movie stars and, famous singers and actresses and all sorts of influencers and celebrities that are explanting, and they're talking about it. And that's huge because, I only have a few thousand followers on Instagram, but if somebody has 1 million followers and they're like, my breast implants were making me sick, so I took them out and I got better, the reach that they have is so much further than what we can do. But then collectively, all of us together, the reach is just, the sky's the limit, right? So we just kind of made a pact to let's just partner with global advocates all over, and anybody who wants to help in whatever their passion is, we'd love to foster whatever passion a woman has, whether it's through art or music or poetry or video montage. We encourage everybody to just take your passion, take what you love to do, and raise awareness. And I just love seeing it. And I know for some people, it's an uncomfortable topic. I mean, especially for breast cancer ladies, I literally have no breasts. And I don't care. I don't mind talking about it, but some people are self-conscious about that, or some people didn't even want anyone to know they had breast implants. So then to come forward with it, you know, and say this happened to me, that's a very strong and bold move. So we're always happy to support those women and just thank them for sharing their story, because they might have friends on their friends list that Terri and I don't have. So every little piece of awareness counts for sure.
Gosh, I
And
totally.
to be honest, that's how we got to you, because, you know, I figured that's where you probably headed to.
Yeah.
But that's how we got to you, so that, you know, one more, your passion, what you love to do, you know, connecting more advocates together. We just love, that's what we're trying to do. So if we work together, we actually can accomplish more.
Right. And I agree with you fully. I think that's been the biggest priority for me, right? Is not just that we reach more, but women are like, I didn't find the information that could have really served me as soon as it would have served me, right? I found Robyn way late in my explant game, had never even heard of you. And if I can help somebody else have that information way sooner, that does make a difference in how quickly we heal from this and what battles we're fighting, right? If we're going at this alone, this shit is hard. Like, it is really hard. And so even just if you're not at all interested in being an advocate, that's 1,000% okay, right? But if we all, the ones of us that do want to advocate and talk about this and get it out there, it does make a difference, even if they have 5 followers or 5,000 or 5 million. So I totally agree wholeheartedly. I'm so excited to have you guys speak. This is going to be amazing. Can you guys just kind of give us a brief rundown of what exactly you're going to cover at the summit, just so women have an idea?
Yeah, we would love to talk about just the legal parts of breast implants and kind of how we got here. Breast implants have a very colorful and long, jaded history in the medical community. So we'll shed a little bit of light on that and how we got that information. You know, research is huge. I think people underestimate the amount of information that truly is out there. But in reality, a lot of it is not easy to find either. And so that's one of our biggest passions at GPAC too, is to put information on our website that people can have. And everything is scientifically sound. Like, everything is scientifically backed. The studies that we look at, the FDA announcements, the FDA transcripts. I mean, we've spent hours and days reviewing information so that we are sure that we're putting truthful information out there. But it is hard to find. And I have people, I mean, that's one of my things I'm so open to. Just if you have a question or you need information, text me, call me, message me, because it is hard to find. And I have had people that are at their wits' end because they've spent 2 weeks just trying to find a study. And I know where to look now because I've been doing it for so long. So I'm happy to share that information and just kind of how we got here with it. But also really a call to action with patients, that if you're seeing these doctors and they're still telling you it's not your implants, it can't be your implants, they're FDA approved, they're safe, sadly, we need to educate those doctors. And we have all the information to do it now. And, you know, it's, like I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there is a lot of pushback, and there's a lot of status quo that things have just stayed the same for decades. But it's time to just step it up a notch. And we really need to demand action and just try and network with other people, as many people as we can, to just have a voice and have that voice be heard.
One of the other things that we'll be presenting too is how you can help. Like, you don't have to be an advocate. This doesn't have to be something that you choose for your life. You'll know if it's something that you need to do for you. But there's simple things that you can do, like reporting your adverse event to the FDA, to let them know what has happened to you, that you were sick, that you explanted, that you took your implants out, and that you feel better. Like, all the different steps you can report. And then the other thing that we would love is we have a survey out right now for change.org, that we are trying to get the FDA to give a healthcare provider letter. And that's just a quick signature. It's something very easy. But we need a healthcare provider letter because, like you were saying, you go to all these doctors and none of them even think to say, hey, it could be your implants. I mean, I went to well over probably 50, 60 doctors. I mean, my primary doctor sent me everywhere trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I know I'm not the only one. So that if we have that information out there, it will help the whole community. So those are the things that we're going to talk about.
And one of the things that I love, sorry, is never underestimate the power of planting a seed. You know, I've had so many women who not necessarily want to dedicate their life to advocacy like Terri and I do, but, you know, they want to help where they can. And they're like, well, you know, I have a friend at church or a friend in my women's group, and she's not feeling well. And I know she has all these problems. She's been diagnosed with 3 autoimmune diseases. And I tried to talk to her about my story, but she wasn't receptive. And that's okay. It's important to understand that not everyone's going to get it the first time, but the power of planting that seed and sharing your journey and your story, I think that's the most powerful thing we can do, is share our own experience, because nobody likes to be told what to do. Oh, you're sick, you should take your breast implants out. That's not how the conversation should go. The conversation should go, you know, I got breast implants. I felt good for a while, but one by one, things started happening to me. And this is what happened to me. Oh, and by the way, it happened to several 100,000 other women. And here's a group you can look into, and here's some information we can share. So just the power of planting that seed, the person might not go and research right away, or they might not join the group right away, but something, I can't tell you how many women have come back a year later, 2 years later. Robyn, I thought you were crazy. I thought, you know, that doesn't make sense. Like, my doctor told me they were safe. I chose to believe my doctor, but now I know because I'm seeing it with other people. So just never underestimate the share of your story one time can save a life. And it has a million times over for Terri and I. So, and that's always fun to see the fruits of our labor, right? And just see these women get better after explant. I mean, I went to a consultation appointment, which I do a lot of that as well. I'm here in the Phoenix area. And this woman could barely walk to her car because her joints were so swollen and so stiff. And I mean, she was probably my age, maybe even a little bit younger. And she was walking like a 95-year-old woman. And I felt so bad for her. And she explanted several months later. And then I saw a Facebook post from her like 6 months after that. And she was hiking in the Arizona mountains. And I'm like, this woman couldn't even walk to her car before she explanted. And now she's hiking mountains with her kids. So that, for me, just seeing the results, it's like, how can you deny that, you know? And then just our network with plastic surgeons, where we've been very fortunate to connect with a group of plastic surgeons all over the world, that just same thing. Like, they didn't really believe it themselves because I learned this in medical school and the FDA says this, but time after time, they were seeing patients come into their office just saying, I want my implants out. They take their implants out and the patient comes back for their 2 week, 6 week, 3 month post-op, and they look amazing. They look healthier. They are more energetic. Their color is better. So it gets to a point where these surgeons are like, okay, I didn't really believe this before, but I'm seeing the proof, literally walking in my office. So yeah, it's been a blessing just to be able to meet people that are kind of on our side and understand how important it is. And the women that are out there that have breast implants and they're not having any problems, or the problems are manageable, that's great. But for the women like you guys who saw so many doctors, it's just not fair. It's just not fair that you should have to suffer needlessly for longer when you can get help quicker. So.
Well, I can totally attest to what you were saying, because my girlfriend got so sick and had her implants removed. And I was there, saw that happening to her, and still refused to admit that mine were making me sick for 3 more years. So I was totally that person.
Wow.
But now I look at her.
You just planted, right?
Yeah. And now I'm 1,000% healthier, right? Which actually, that reminds me what I was going to ask you, Terri. When did you get your implants out? What year? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was 2016.
2016. Okay, so 2016, I got my implants out last year, so 2022. Nothing changed for us in that time, right? So your experience was all of these different specialists, and you spent thousands of dollars, and you ultimately had to come to the conclusion, like, I'm going to take these out and pray that it's what's
Yeah.
causing the problems, right? I did the exact same thing last year. That's not fair.
No, that's 7 years worth of time.
Well, and like our friend Laura Bowden, I mean, she did the same exact thing 30 years ago. 30 years this has been going. I mean, it's been going on for 60 years, but 30 years is really when hundreds of thousands of women were like really pressuring the FDA and the plastic surgeon community. I mean, enough evidence that they took breast implants off the market, the silicone ones. And then, you know, we'll talk about that in our presentation, just how and where everything went wrong, because we shouldn't be here. A product was pulled from the market, and before that product came back to market, there's so many steps and boxes that should have been checked that weren't. And then when you start really going back in time and reading transcripts and looking at the studies that were presented to the FDA, we find out that there's a small group of plastic surgeons who make hundreds of thousands of dollars from the implant manufacturers, and they were the ones pushing the studies that they thought the FDA should look at, and not other studies from different medical practitioners that aren't plastic surgeons.
But manufacturer studies.
Yeah. So there's a lot wrong with how it happened and just the whole FDA policies and their approval process. So, yeah.
But I think it's important that women understand how we got here, like you're saying, right? Because it's really easy. Like, we go into the doctor expecting them to know what's best and expecting them to know what to do. And that's why we get so sick and battle it for so long, because we have no idea, right? And the last thing, we got our implants for a reason. Like, we wanted them, right? None of us were like, hey, I decided I want everything to be because of these, and I want to just have a reason to take them out. Like, that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
I would have kept mine, which I'm glad. I actually like my body way better without them, which is so funny. So I'm super grateful for so many reasons that they're out, but mostly that I'm alive and can walk upstairs.
Same.
But I think understanding why we got where we are, and why it's not necessarily all of our doctors' faults, but there's balls being dropped on every single court across this conversation. And that is not something that's going to change quickly if we're solely depending on doctors and manufacturers and them to do it, right? Like, we have to know the questions to ask, and we have to come together, and we have to learn how to advocate for ourselves on this, or else it's going to be, I mean,
another 6 years,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe,
yeah,
Absolutely.
right? If not another 300, because they just don't, it's not a priority, right? Because they're not the ones dying. They're not the ones getting cancer. They're not the ones losing decades with children. Like, they might be actually maybe wives and friends and siblings, but I don't know. At the end of the day, it's, if we can help them, that's what's important. So I'm so excited for you guys to talk on this, and especially because now we talked a little bit about a giveaway with what you guys are doing. So we'll have you guys, we'll talk about how to get those signatures that you mentioned, and I'll have a surprise at the event and stuff. And I'm super excited. I think it's gonna be just it's just incredible information, but also a super fun way to deliver it. So any other thoughts before I let you go for now? I know you guys are so busy.
I think we covered.
we probably gave the full presentation.
Touched on all the topics.
No, we have a lot of good things coming your way for this presentation. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, definitely tune
And
in.
is there anything you want us to focus on or share that you just absolutely feel like your audience needs to know, something that we're working on?
You know, I think really what you touched on, Robyn, about how we got here and why it's important to understand that your doctor may not know the answer, or they may not know to ask, right? Because that's what, like, I was so pissed after I realized that I went to all of these different specialists and not a single one of them asked me if I had breast implants or brought it up as a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm like, how are millions of women getting sick? And like, none of them consider it. And so I think it's important to understand why they don't, and why it's so important that you empower yourself with that information and take that into the doctor's office, not like quit waiting for them to figure it out. You figure it out for you and you ask the questions. And so I think that that's probably one of my most important flags that I want you and Terri to wave.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to advocate for themselves, because at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. The doctors aren't perfect. They can't know everything about every topic. Terri and I have learned a lot about what they learn in medical school and for how long. And it's actually shocking what little they know about some things. The good doctors will be open to that communication, and that's why Terri and I have really made it a point to keep everything structurally, like, scientifically sound, because the FDA, the manufacturers, the doctors, everybody's data driven, and they talk about the science, the scientific data, and
evidence-based. Yeah.
Evidence-based. And so, so if they want evidence-based, we've dug up the evidence. And the funny thing is, it's different than the evidence that they know. So that's it, is just getting it out there and changing the narrative and educating these doctors, because, if they're seeing these patients come in, it's not just breast implants either. There are so many other medical devices on the market that can cause these problems. And a simple question on your intake form, can change how you treat a patient and what you're looking for. So, and a lot of people don't really consider, like, a breast augmentation surgery. Sometimes we go to the doctor and it says, please list all the surgeries you've had, like, I got my appendix out, my gallbladder. But I think breast augmentations are such an easy surgery. A lot of women forget to put it on there, because
it's a cosmetic surgery. So you don't think it's like, I've made this correlation before. It's like getting your hair colored. It is just a cosmetic thing that we do. And that's how it is presented to us. That is how it is marketed to us. So you don't think when you are filling out your forms that, oh yeah, surgery, I had breast implant surgery. You just.
And breast augmentations, they make this tiny little incision, they pop the implant in. Most people think of surgery as slicing you open and bleeding and stitches or broken bones and whatnot. But it is a surgery. It's a surgical procedure, but albeit a cosmetic one. So I think sometimes people just overlook it, because it is a pretty relatively simple surgery compared to other things you can go through. Now mastectomy is different, because we go through a lot for even just getting the implants. Like having your breast removed is entirely different than like an augmentation. But yeah, so just little things like that, and putting that on your intake form. Do you have an implanted medical device? We have Jessica Proth, she's a nurse who's working on really pushing hard in the nursing community to get laws passed for screening for medical devices. And the sad thing is, some people don't even know they have a medical device in their body. Yeah, it's crazy. So awareness, and informed consent, and doctors just being transparent and open and giving patients all the information they need to make an educated and informed decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I'm so excited, because I feel like we can't change that every single doctor doesn't have that information right now. But what we can change is that the women listening to the Explant Secrets Summer Summit will have that information going in.